It's gonna be a sloppy ass video. Happy New Year! Woo! Gonna be the worst year ever. What do we do with the dirtbags? It's a bag of dirt. But if you are a gardener and you clicked on to see what to do with your bags of dirt, put in the garage there, fella. Just kidding. You knew more than that. You can also put it out in your yard. If you take lawn clippings, you can use them and cover dirt well, and that way next time you come back to it in the spring, you can go right to your bag of dirt, so you can keep it in the corner of your garden or else on the outside of your building, wherever you're gardening. You can actually keep the dirt right there and then spread it out and use it as you will. And if you want to keep it separate from the ground dirt, then keep the bag itself and still cover it with stuff to protect it from animals or prying in. You'll probably still get a little bit of that if you're not just going to keep it in a shed or garage, but yeah. I garden. It's praxis. But that's the end of the practical gardening side. So you gardeners, watch some other values about how to be a good person. Maybe the video essay playlist, that'll get you going. And then I'll see you back with this at the end. Transformed? The dirtbags, the people that are canceled, who are left on their own, who are unfollowed, who are problematic, who we don't listen to anymore, and who are off doing their own thing, drinking Mai Tais and making theories and crafting actual jokes where they talk about Donald Trump's mushroom penis. There are a whole lot of people that we have canceled, right? Because canceling is a thing. It isn't a thing. There are a whole lot of dirtbags, those ableist language, those people with trolls, the people that don't take anything seriously because we're in Hell World. The nihilist ones, though not quite the nihilist ones, just the people, we kind of canceled. What do we do with all those people off by themselves having fun writing papers and making weird podcasts? Those people who used, ableist language, who still use the word stupid, who haven't purged everything just because us on our little track of intersectionalism they've violated some behavior instead of following it through, and now they're out there beyond the track of intersectionalism. What will they do? What we do with them now is we clip and ship. We take the things they say and we put them in long Twitter threads where we don't actually say their name, but they're the clear subject, and everyone's real mad at them because they did a thing wrong. Or they talked with someone that did a thing wrong, right? That's our standards. Or they were accused and didn't immediately have evidence about a thing they weren't aware about, so cancel them for not knowing. Ignorance is no excuse. Get the fuck out. Welcome to Cancel Island. There are margaritas there. Can I get canceled? How much are the margaritas? Mai Tais? Bahama Mamas? Do they have Bahama Mamas on Cancelled Island? We might be missing something by just sequestering these people. Trolls, reactionaries, bigots, oh my. Who are these ruffians in our ranks? And once more, these ruffians have made videos about clout chasing. More often than not, a light correction of praxis turns into a dog pile. Oh, what are those people doing over there? Let's dog pile on. Let's check their name on Twitter to make sure they're okay, and then dog pile. I don't know who this person is. Ha ha! I heard they were bad. You heard they were bad. And the ironic thing about this is usually when these people respond and try to correct the people that are trying to correct things, their words are immediately used against them. People start calling out random associations from BreadTube. Peter Coffin, Angie Speaks talk about clout chasing and the problems they're in, and all of a sudden, clout chasing gets introduced into the dog pile, and it is what Peter Coffin is doing. Bad clout chaser. What? Did you just fucking listen to anything anyone said? Peter Coffin, Angie Speaks, Mark Fisher's words have all been used against them to try to correct their behavior. And Mark Fisher is fucking dead. And people are still calling him out. He's fucking dead. He died. So a major component in people being canceled is bad faith arguments. But what really is bad faith? Just taking something and then imagining it as bad as possible? Taking something and not imagining they mean it in a good way? It's really malice. Bad malice towards a person. Though the malice take is very easy. our enemies have mastered it. The people that blindly support our enemies and hurt themselves do it all the time. It's behavior that's very easy to learn by example, or bad example. Now I'm hungry. I'm fucked, guys. I'm fucked, boys. Oh, boys. So being easy is going to be a large component in why it is so widespread. But not only that, but it is an easy component, like I said, of our enemies. And our enemies have an active interest in infiltrating our spaces and making us fight with these bad faith reactionary reactions. What does a reactionary do? They react. They respond that something does not fit a pre-imagined way of doing things, and that has found itself in intersectional spaces, either naturally or because of infiltration. Though a large part of the call against infighting is people misunderstanding cooperation and discourse for fighting, because on the left, the views are transformative, the views are evolving, we are learning about a space. And that is because we are trying to decolonize our minds. We're trying to find a way to work together that does not support the current mode. But the problem is the current mode is so invasive and all-encompassing that it's infested every aspect of our lives, so that we have to go over every aspect of our lives to see what is good or bad. And the problem with being so public in this is that people start trying to scold each other for this. What is freshly learned by one person is assumed to be universally freshly learned. It's a different kind of flaw where once you learn something, you assume that everyone also knows it. It makes communicating with people that know less than you or experience other things with you difficult, because you are always relying on them having the same prior knowledge as you. And I can't say that I haven't done this, but I can say that I'm aware of it and it's wrong and I am sorry. And I'm going to try to not do that. That is one of the reasons why now many of the bigger leftists no longer call out individual reactionaries' videos. A lot of early age bomber guy videos would be him talking about the golden one or some other glass chewing reactionary. But now we go against general trends. We try to aim high. We aim for the intellectual core. And once somebody makes a video about it, a lot of people internalize that knowledge and internalize those lessons. But sometimes that happens in a reactionary way. And that is why we have canceled people. That's why we have dirtbags. People who refuse not to learn necessarily, but refuse to really go all this hand-holding, to do everything the exact same way, to worry about a script. A script that once part of the script is violated, another part kicks in. You know exactly what to do if somebody uses the R word, and you know what that R word is, and you're half thinking of goading me for even using it or referring to the R word. That is a script. That is a reaction that you have. A script that our enemies are very good at coming up with and then putting out, because their views do not change. So their script only needs to be memorized and enforced, and they put out thousands of hours of videos. And once something happens in the mainstream that violates their script, their reaction is out there within minutes. Before they could even logically watch an entire Contrapoints video, they have their reaction to it, despite what it might say, because what it says is irrelevant because they have their script. What they are going to say will not change. What they don't do is listen. Listening is harder than reacting. You can listen to almost anyone and find good points, find data, find sources that you want to then use. I'm not telling you to listen to reactionaries, just, but they do have some good examples. Even More News, also known as Cody's Shody, has covered Tucker Carlson, white supremacist, several times and called him out several times for his white supremacist stuff. But still, he's watched enough that he's able to find when Tucker Carlson says something that is half correct, or half right. And then he can talk about how this thing doesn't mean what the reactionary white supremacist Tucker Carlson says it means. Fox News has even done a journalism at least once when they had on a man who claimed to be hiring protesters for George Soros. They did a little journalism and found out that, yeah, you're not a real. And they called him out to it on Fox News, which is, good job Fox News. One journalism for Fox News. I think I've said this in a video before. But let's look at someone that isn't completely awful. Let's look at a liberal, particularly neoliberals with neoliberal views. Movie Bob is one such liberal with neoliberal views. One neoliberal view is that neoliberal doesn't mean anything. Shut up. Movie Bob is very secure in his weird dumb views. His weird dumb views that have a couple caps that keep them in. He knows a lot of good stuff, and he puts a lot of good stuff in his videos. There are signs in Movie Bob's essays of good thoughts and great knowledge, especially in his Big Picture series, that I'm especially a fan of, despite how he still keeps his wrong ideas of where these signs are pointing. That wrong idea mainly being that markets are the best way to solve every problem, and maybe that markets work for people instead of just the 1%. But Movie Bob knows what the fuck feminism is, even if sometimes he says a thing that is real dumb about feminism. Movie Bob has had a long example of the waves of feminism. He's heard them in college. He's seen videos. He has a knowledge of what feminism is, and can probably say a better definition right off the bat than I could. He knows that script. He knows, for example, that feminism means more than representation. Movie Bob knows that monopolies are bad, and knows that the Disney monopoly does not mean great thing for entertainment or creatives. He knows that film corporations are geared to make money and make decisions that will make them the most money, and he knows how they pander to places like China, who is very self-interested in propaganda and being correct and keeping with their own reactionary script. Movie Bob knows that the art that we have today, that our culture has been shaped and transformed in part by the CIA and the money they infused into the Iowa Writing Foundation, which made the Iowa Writers Program. A program and ideas about art that say that subtext is better than putting your message in the text. That arguing about a vague thing is the best way to make art. And they think that so that, people don't explicitly talk about communism in their books. Or even the people that do, the reader can then interpret those messages away and think about whatever market-friendly message they can come up with. Movie Bob knows all of these things, yet he supports the system, the markets, and the government that made all of these things happen, that messed with what we now think of as culture and art. He knows all these things, and yet he tried to call out Chapo Trap House for talking about how Wonder Woman is not a feminist movie. Movie Bob might even know that Wonder Woman is not a feminist movie. I don't feel like checking. I don't feel like talking to him ever again. He might know that feminism and intersectional feminism might demand more of a film than just putting a woman in it and letting her talk a little. But yet, he sticks to the kind of script that makes it so that he can dismiss Chapo Trap House. So he can dismiss the Dirtbags. And he is not a leftist. So why should we do what the not leftists do? The reactionary cave-ins the progress that belongs to the liberal belongs to us all. I list both of these people. Unlike Movie Bob, Chapo Trap House does not hold the general myths of capitalism, but they also don't hold the general myths of leftism and intersectional feminism scripts as they dictate us to behave. Allison Kilkenny is a fantastic person, cool Twitter personality, great cat owner, and the host and co-host of two fantastic leftist podcasts. She's a New York City actor. She has been to numerous protests. She's a far-left thinker who co-hosted Citizen Radio and recently hosts Light Treason News. She has been to protests. She has been in fights in protests. In her previous show, Citizen Radio, the logo is a man in a bandana, and it's been a man in a bandana since before Antifa came on the scene and all the reactionaries can call anyone with a bandana an Antifa. It's there because Alison Kilkenny goes to protest. In her show, she gave a checklist for people wanting to go to serious protests, a checklist that includes bandana, goggles, earplugs, water bottles, bags, loose clothes, and jujitsu lessons. She mentions jujitsu lessons or some kind of martial arts training because in her idea, a protest with counter-protests or even with police where violence is very likely to happen, you are much better off having known how to take a punch and not being stunned by the fact that you've suddenly been hurt and you feel that pain, and you'll be able to move through a violent crowd better than if you go there completely unaware. And I am scared of everything I just said, and Alison Kenny lives that reality. Her account of the Women's March was one of surprise. Because if you recall, Women's March, one of the largest marches that happened in DC, also a very peaceful one, where her and the police were both shocked at how no one was fighting. She's there with her gear, with her riot gear. The police are in plain uniforms. Women are just talking and having knitted hats, and she is so confused about how this is unlike every other protest she's ever been to. Hoarding, please look at me now. I mention Allison because Light Treason News is fantastic and she needs more supporters and it's a great thing to listen to, but also she thought it was some good praxis where if trolls tried to listen or react to something that she made in one of her podcasts, in her previous podcast, Citizen Radio, they had a practice called the douchebag buffer. And with the douchebag buffer, they would shoot the shit. They would talk about their life, they would talk about little annoying things, they talk about acting, they talk about improv, they talk about life in New York, anything to eat up a half an hour, in order to make everyone who'd want to clip something that they said so they then can take it out of context or attack her or use it against her in some way, so that most people that would do that, that wanted to do that, would get bored and stop wasting their time and would leave them alone. It was an anti-trolling method, and it worked, I thought, really well, but also let the podcast take more of a slice of life thing out of it than just like the news, right? So it's cool. It's cool. They talk about their general worries and self-care, while reactionaries that don't care about any of that stuff and just want to troll them get bored, because self-care is very important for a certain kind of person in these kind of trying times and the kind of circumstances that we have in capitalism, where not everyone has a good job and not everyone has secure housing. And especially for people who are fighting the system and looking into news, not everyone can just do that and live their life normally and find a way to relax without purposely taking time, care for themselves. Self-care. And the first episode of Chapo Trap House blasts this practice the fuck out. They make fun of everything in a good 10-15 seconds. Shitty audio, talking about the cats, the jujitsu, making fun of everything that's involved in the douchebag buffer. They blow it the fuck out, which is kinda ableist for making fun of self-care. But Chapo Trap House does this because they're a collection of Twitter personalities that got together while making fun of New York Times people, and that is mostly what they do, because they're a bunch of people on Twitter that just make fun of everything that late-stage capitalism grinds out in its propaganda course. And part of that is self-care. Of course, it's not self-care's fault, it's not feminists' fault, it's not trying to make the world more accessible's fault. It's the fault of capitalist realism consuming everything and then putting a price tag on it and selling it back to us. Even works of resistance serve to benefit capitalism. Despite those things being praxis, being ideas in order to take on trolls and ideas in order to survive in our world, they made fun of it. And not necessarily for the sophisticated reason I just said, but also because they make fun of things. But they are more than just a bunch of bards with keyboards. A bunch of bards in the party. Keybards. Someone already made a joke today and I love it. The main meat of Chapo Trap House is their in-depth reading series. They take media and rake it over the coals. They take rotting, intellectually bankrupt showings of the major intellectual facade newsletters and journals that exist. Your Bloombergs, your New York Times, your Wall Street journals, but not only articles, but also books by philosophers and mathematicians and serious economic people. They go through these possible gated off things, those newspaper sites that require a credit card to read. They go through these gates and then they read them in depth and then they break them down and make fun of them very intelligently, and sometimes not so intelligently, because let's face it, capitalist propaganda kinda sucks and kinda deserves to be ridiculed for the pure garbage that it is. Part of the facade, part of the lie of intellectualism is how boring it is. And it's boring because it's only accessible to a certain number of people that are really smart and really interested, but a part of that is just hiding how boring it is and just being boring. Pieces that are very long and take a while to get to the point and impress upon you how impressive it's supposed to be, Chapo kicks the shit out of. They take the media that only really smart, informed people understand, and they make fun of those chud nerds. And they point out the flaws in logic and the complete lies that are professed by the neoliberal and conservative news outlets. Not only those two, but also what passes for leftist media. And Chapo knows leftist theories. They know Marx. Most of the time it comes out in little jabs, in little annoying things when they talk about the labor or the proletariat, or oh yeah, this would really work. But those little references hide a greater swelling of knowledge that come out in some interviews and some in-depth talks they have with people such as Richard Wolff, where all of a sudden they're all talking about Marx and all these people that I do not know, but talking about ways to construct society and how co-ops might or might not work, or how we need to really break down the system. And the Richard Wolff episode is probably one of my favorite and one of the biggest demonstrations of the depth of their knowledge for these people that read. They just read. There are a bunch of people that are able to, like, I don't know, I don't understand. They're just regular high-functioning people that read once in a while. Like, oh man, we need you. We need you so bad on the left, and they're just not caught in our webs of script. They can have a strong back and forth with Richard Wolff, lifetime Marxist economist of Democracy Now! There's a lot of knowledge and experience that gets left on the table because somebody uses the word stupid, which is too ableist. I have a lot of leeway when someone's getting emotional because they're calling out the glass-chewing psychopaths who are causing mass murders just because they happen to be in our government. I'm not going to blame anyone for not holding back, for calling those people out, or for getting a bit ragey, or for not taking seriously every weird little thing that we've come up with on Twitter to care about, because they're kind of worried about the bigger picture. Though not to say that they never change their ways or their language in order to accommodate or make people feel welcomed into their spaces. For this reason, several people have started making up their own insults. Chapo Trap House is a flurry of things that they use to refer to people to be more specific in their language. When they talk about the fail sons, the fail daughters, chuds, worm brains, words that don't have roots in ableist speech or any kind of racist speech, they're free to use and they can make them up. And that's why they've started using these words. Because there are a lot of fail son, fail daughter chuds in our media with brainworms that pass as intellectuals. And they are our true enemies. Our enemies are the people in media that want to keep capitalism going. Our enemies are the conservatives. Our enemies are the billionaires. Our enemies are the people in government that try to keep these wheels running. And that does include several neoliberals. Our enemies do include the people that work against their interests in order to support conservative and neoliberal thought. And maybe we shouldn't cut off thought in the same way that reactionaries and conservatives and neoliberals use in order to decide who not to listen to. Because in several ways, the things that neoliberals choose to cut off aren't just for using feminist words and aren't just for being rude or not liking Wonder Woman, but they're things like grammar, which is racist in how it's used, applying to jobs and deciding whose voice to listen to. If there's words spelled wrong and grammar misused in an application, an article, a letter, it's pretty easy for several neoliberals to decide to ignore that voice completely. It's less easy to listen to what these people are actually saying. It's less easy to see them as people that will continue working and continue growing if they're not busy fending off attacks about whether or not they should use the word stupid. Maybe don't cut off socialist allies for the same reason that neoliberals cut off socialism. Not that you have to like it, or you have to listen to every episode, or everyone who calls himself socialist deserves all of your attention. Just listen, like a person. You can still use grains of salt and keep your script in mind, but don't be salty. Listen to what someone says to you, and you can take a great deal of things. You'll never know what you'll be able to learn. This video is brought to you by me, Ray, but it can be brought to you by you. If you want, you can go to my Patreon. I have writing, I have more videos, I have scripts, I have polls that you can take, and you can help me support and make more videos like this, and we can continue an ongoing conversation. And you can stop canceling me with your lack of money. Also do the YouTube things like comment, subscribe, whatever. Subscribe!